Kitty, look who's here. All our fans are out there.
Okay, take 33 on the RRR-009 Easy Open Swayback Jack by Rough Ryder. The Rough Ryder Reserve Easy Open Jack with a worn cliff blade and 10 micarta handles. I have tried multiple times to get this video correct, and I have screwed up numerous times. So let's try again. What can I say about this knife? First of all, I really like it. It's a really well-made knife. It looks great. However, it does have one flaw, and that flaw might be considered big for some people, or it might be considered small for some people. To me, it's a serious flaw, but not so much that I want to return the knife or something, because I do like the knife, and I'm getting used to it. One of the other things before we go into great details on this, here's all the stuff that comes with it. You get the knife, it comes wrapped in wax paper, you get the cleaning cloth, and it comes in the metal tube. That's the way all your Rough Ryder Reserve knives come. Next up, let's get this comparison out of the way. Everyone else has done it. I'm going to do it too. You got these two knives, the Micarta Work Knife. This one is in the blue micarta, or blue denim micarta. And then you have the Easy Open Jack. And everyone looks at them and goes, yep, they are very close to the same. As you can tell, the Micarta Work Knife is a little bit beefier, has a definitely larger front bolster. Overall size is ever so slightly longer, and it's just a little chunkier of a knife. Thickness wise, the Easy Open Jack is probably a little thinner. It feels slimmer in your hand. It feels nicer in your hand also. I suspect that the micarta on the Easy Open Reserve knife is a better quality micarta. It looks to be a better quality micarta. They did not say what kind it was. I don't know if it's a canvas micarta, denim micarta, linen micarta, whatever kind of micarta is. This is a denim micarta, and if you notice the grain in it, it is definitely different. I feel like this one is going to hold up better. I won't know until I've actually carried it for a while. We'll see if this is an actually better quality micarta than this micarta. That's something that people have got to understand, that there are different qualities of micarta. The first Micarta Work Knife that came out was a paper micarta, and that is a very low quality micarta. This is a denim micarta, and that is better than a paper micarta, but there's also like burlap micarta, which is going to be better than a denim micarta. Linen micarta is better than burlap micarta, or is better than a denim micarta. So it really depends on what the material was that was used to make the micarta, if it's a better micarta or not. But this one looks better, at least, than this one. I like the solid tan color. You do see the lines going in it. Is that enough for the price jump? This also has a 440A stainless steel blade. This has a D2 semi-stainless tool steel blade in it. And that's really the big differences between it. This one looks a little cleaner, looks a little nicer, has a little more sleek lines going on it, has a better grade of steel in it than this one. This 440A is a budget steel. D2 tool steel, some people consider it a budget steel these days. It is not. It's a semi-stainless steel, been around for a while, and it's going to hold an edge much longer than your 440A. So that's up to you. The question is, this is $17, this is $40. The question is to you, is this knife going to be worth $23 more than this? Well, you're going to have to think about that one. Hopefully when I tell you more about this knife. It'll help you decide a little bit on if you're willing to spend $23 more for a knife that looks a little more elegant when it comes down to actually usability and everything else. All right, with that said, let me get a drink of water and then we'll start up again. Now, there have been several people who've already reviewed these knives, and some of the reviews have been very positive, and some of them have, a couple people made some very loud complaints on Facebook about the quality of the knife that they received. And that is something that happens sometimes with knives. Sometimes the quality control has a slip here and there. It happened with my Rhino toe. The first Rhino toe I got was just dreadful, but Rough Ryder replaced it. You know, sometimes quality control has a slip. And in the case of my knife, well, if I want to be real nitpicky, yeah, there are some issues with the finish, but they are so minor that they're really not worth mentioning. But I will mention them here just so I can let you see. If you notice here, you see that a little black line there? That is not a gap. That is where the glue or the epoxy used to hold the micarta to the handle has seeped out or filled in little gaps. So maybe there was some gapping. I don't know. You can see it running along the edge there. But that is really where the epoxy has matched up into the micarta. It might have been that the epoxy has actually stained the micarta, because micarta will stain. So that might be what has happened with that. So it might not actually be gapping, but actually where the micarta has absorbed the epoxy that was used to hold the micarta into the handle or into the brass liner. And if you notice, it is also pinned on there with nickel silver pins, and the brass lanyard tube in the back here also acts as a pin to hold the micarta in place. So you have the micarta being held onto the handle or onto the brass liners with an epoxy and also pins, which is very common. Rough Ryder did the same thing here. You can't see it as well here simply because it's a much darker blue, and it might be that they used a better quality epoxy, which is stronger, holding the handle in place. You got to think of these little things when you start talking about the price of the knife. They may be using a better quality epoxy to hold the covers to the liners than they are on this. This is flush, very flush, very nice. The brass liners look really good. There was a little bit of a stain on the brass liner in one spot, and that's probably from glue or something. I don't know. I wiped it off. It's fine. There is a little bit, a minor gap right where the bolster and the micarta reaches or touches. And it might be that the micarta has shrunk a little bit. I don't know. But I do feel a little bit of a gap there. It is nothing dramatic. The finish along the back is nice and smooth. If you look at the blade there, it looks like it's well centered. Or is it? Because I can also do this, and then the blade isn't so well centered. Or I could do that, and again, the blade is not well centered. And that's because the blade does move inside the channel. And guess what? The blade also moves inside this channel. And I could also grab this A. Wright & Son lamb's foot knife, and the blade moves in the channel. And I can grab this Brother, and the blade moves inside the channel. And I can do the same thing with a Buck 110. I can do it with all sorts of knives. The blade is going to move inside the channel. If that's a problem with you, I don't know what to tell you. Looky here. That's my Artisan. It's a modern folder, and the blade still moves inside the channel. But for the most part, the blade is in there, and it's not hitting anything. So to me, that's an A+. There is no real blade rub going on. and the pivot on the knife moves very smoothly. A very tight blade though. Good half stop going on. You see that it pops right to it. Really loud closing snap. My biggest problem with it is the pull, the location of the nail nick, and the swedge, and we'll get into that in a minute. You got the bar down there, which matches into that, so you don't have any blade wrap going on. So they solved that problem very well. So my only real complaint on this whole knife is right here with the swedge, and right here, the nail nick, which is way back here. Now, a lot of people have said, why did they put the nail nick there? Well, I'm glad they did, but I wish they would have put it up here where it kind of really belongs. And a lot of people go, well, you got the easy out. Why do you need a nail nick? Well, traditionally, easy out knives have had a nail nick. I know people don't think that, but yeah, most easy out knives have a nail nick, and it is usually somewhere around where the easy out cutout is. And well, let me show you a couple different knives that have them. Here's an old Camillus Navy Jack, and you see it's got the nail nick there, and it's also got the easy out cutout. And here's my little Klein tool electrician knife, and you don't even need it cut out on here, but there is a little bit of a easy out cutout there for the blade, and you notice it also has the nail nick. Now there's a couple of reasons why there's a nail nick on the blade, and one of the main reasons I suspect is simply because, well, the same blade is used in other knives that don't have an easy out cutout. So that's one of the reasons why you might have a nail nick already in the blade. But they could also have made this blade or put this blade in there without putting the nail nick in. So why do they do that? And really, there's a couple reasons why you still want the nail nick in the blade. I was thinking also the same thing before I started thinking about this and started looking at all my other easy out knives and started playing around with them. And then I started realizing that, you know what, that nail nick on the blade, even with the easy out cutout, makes a lot of sense. However, the nail nick being way back here when you have an easy out blade is a little bit problematic, and the only reason that nail nick is this far back is because of the swedge, and the swedge has its own issues. But it would have been much better if this nail nick was up around here on the blade, because when it's way back here, the pull becomes much harder. And the reason the pull becomes much harder is because it's much closer to the fulcrum or the pivot point. And the closer you are to the pivot point, the harder you have to pull. If the nail nick were way out towards the front, it would be much easier to open this. But you think, well, you've got the easy out cutout, so you don't really need the nail nick. You can just pinch the blade. But the problem is pinching the blade, because you have a very strong pull here, and you also have a swedge, and the swedge makes it much easier for your fingers to slip off. So if you're a person who has any kind of issues with pinching, like if you have arthritis or if you have carpal tunnel or anything else, these knives are going to be much harder to open than they should be because of the swedge. Swedges look great. They really do. A lot of people like the way they look, but the swedge should be there to improve the function of the knife, not to make the function of the knife less reliable. The main reason you have a swedge on a knife is to improve penetration when you're poking. That's really one of the purposes of it. The other reason is to lighten the blade. Well, this is not going to lighten the blade that much, but really it is going to help with poking. But do you really need it on a Wharncliffe blade? That is a question that kind of needs to be answered on this. And And if you're doing that, if you notice now, instead of having that much blade, let's see here. Okay, let's see if I can measure this. So we have right there. So that's 0.30 inches of blade that we have to grab onto. So as opposed to if we did not have the swedge, we would have had 0.43 inches. So you've lost about 1/10 of an inch of the blade that you have to grab onto because of the swedge. The swedge makes it much more difficult to grab the blade. If you would have had no swedge there, you could have also had the nail nick all the way up there, and you would be able to use the nail nick to pull the blade open. Not to mention, the nail nick on the blade gives you a little more grip on the blade. So if it would have been up here and you're pressing on it with your thumb, you would actually have even an easier way to open the blade, because the nail nick would have been acting as like almost like jimping on the blade, so you could pull it even easier. But instead you have a nice stylish swedge, which is getting in the way of actually the function of the easy out cutout for opening the knife. And that's really the only problem with this knife. So I know Rough Ryder has been going nuts with putting swedges on everything, but they really need to start thinking about how the knife functions before they start putting a swedge on it. And in the case of this, the knife would function a whole lot better without a swedge. Would it look as nice? Possibly not. But at the same time, if you had this the nail nick up here and no swedge, this blade would be so much easier to open than it is right now, because you have a very strong pull on this blade. And up here, the biggest problem is just getting a good grip on it. Back here, it's just very hard because of the distance from the pivot point. So really, that's my biggest problem with this knife. But there is some good news if you want to try and use this knife with gloves. And well, we'll get to that right now. Now, I ride a bicycle, as in the kind you use with pedals, year round. So in the rain, in the snow, it really doesn't matter. I ride a bicycle. And with that, I have these gloves, which are kind of like a neoprene type of glove with a little bit of lining inside. You have the little pleather tips here. They might actually be real leather. I think they are actual leather. And these are so you can work with your iPhone and stuff. And the gloves basically keep your hands dry in the rain and snow when you're trying to hold your bicycle. You see there is a little bit of gripping here, but this is just the little leather patch. These come in real handy in cold weather when you're trying to ride a bicycle. They also come in real handy in cold weather when you're fishing and stuff like that. And a lot of people wear fish gloves and stuff like that. And the good thing about this knife is, even with the design flaw, and I do consider this swedge on this knife a design flaw, this blade is really easy to open when wearing gloves. It's easier to open than other knives. For instance, here's the work knife. This knife is harder to get a grip on when I'm wearing gloves. It's much easier to just take off the gloves, open the knife, put the glove back on, because I just can't really get to the blade because there is not an easy out cutout. But because of the easy out cutout here, it's much easier to just go ahead and grab the blade with the gloves on. But I tell you what, if there was no swedge and if the nail nick was up there, it would even be easier to open if I had gloves on, because I would have much more to grip onto. So that's where I'm standing with this. It's a great little knife. It looks really good. The build quality was really well made. But if you have any kind of issues with your hands where you have problems gripping stuff, especially squeezing, you might be better off sticking with the less expensive Micarta Work Knife that has a nail nick a little further out and opens and closes a lot easier than this knife with the easy out spot up front or the nail nick further back. Because this is a little more difficult to open than it should be, and the main reason it's a little more difficult to open is because of the swedge and the nail nick not being up here. So Rough Ryder, I hope you're listening. Smoky Mountain Knife Works, I hope you're listening. Consider ditching the swedge on knives like this, on the easy open knives, and moving that nail nick up by the easy open spot. And I think you'll have a much better knife going on. And what I'd really like to see is this knife come out again without the swedge and with a spear point blade. A nice easy open jack with a spear point blade. And no swedge. In any case, I'll let you go, and hopefully that helps people make their decisions on if they want to buy that knife or not. Again, it is really a well-made knife. It looks great, but it does have a flaw in the swedge. Stick around for some slides. And as you can probably guess, this is another Rough Ryder Reserve tube. And this is me having a dream of what I would like to find in a Rough Ryder Reserve tube instead of the easy out jack. I would love to be able to open this up someday, drop out a knife, and open it up and have this knife show up in the Rough Ryder Reserve lineup. The 078 jackknife or lockback that they made. And I'd like to see the arrowhead shield engraved into the bolster up there instead of into the handle. I would be happy with a micarta handle at that point even. Maybe some brass liners instead of the stainless steel liners, but just that wonderful blade on there. Imagine that in D2 tool steel. And that wonderful bolster. A nice lockback. Easy to open, easy to close. There. That's my dream of a Rough Ryder Reserve knife. This one here. It's a tried and true pattern. It's copied off of Moki, but man, talk about a wonderful blade and wonderful lines. This is something that I'd like to see in Rough Ryder Reserve. In any case, now I will definitely let you go after a few thoughts.
Let me take just a second to thank you once again for dropping by and spending a few minutes here at Knife Chats with the Pious. I really do appreciate it, and I do appreciate any comments that you leave. So please remember to give me that thumbs up, and also don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you'll know when the next episode is up and running. Thanks again for dropping by. Really do appreciate your time here.